One of the most popular asset classes in estate planning is none other than properties. Do you want to find out the pitfalls in passing down fixed assets like properties to your loved ones? What is the best way to ensure that it doesn't lead to contentious disputes in the family? Find out more in this episode as I interview conveyancing lawyer 𝙒𝙤𝙨, who is also an associate director from 𝙀𝙧𝙨𝙪 LLC. And hi, today we are privileged to have 𝙒𝙤𝙨. 𝙒𝙤𝙨 is actually one of the conveyancing lawyers from 𝙀𝙧𝙨𝙪 LLC. Hi 𝙒𝙒𝙨.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah. 𝙒𝙒𝙨, what do you tell us, like how long have you been in the conveyancing industry and how did you come into practice this area of law?
I actually been practicing for around 5 years now. What happened was actually in my previous company, I was doing family law practice like divorces and probate. And then my ex-staff, one of the head of conveyancing in the department, she left the firm. So my partner then asked me whether I wanted to join as a conveyancing lawyer. So I took up the role and now I'm specializing in conveyancing.
Yeah, you know, one of the areas of estate planning is really about how we distribute to the next generation. And of course, one of the very common asset classes that we are looking at today is none other than properties. Yeah, so you know, when we do estate planning, we always share with clients that when they distribute and when they pass down their properties to the next of kin, there's always an issue, which is where they split too many portions. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Some clients, they just want everything to be fair. So when they have 10 children, they want to give the property to 10 children, although they only have probably one HDB flat. Which honestly, I always tell them that it's not feasible and not ideal.
And why is that not feasible?
I think the simple reason is, okay, let's take a HDB for example. If you want to split your HDB with your 10 children, definitely at the time of your passing, at least 3 or 4 of them will own their own HDBs.
Right.
And because of the Singapore government regulations, you cannot own more than one HDB. So all those children that you intended to give like a share of the HDB, at the end they have to let it go to either their siblings, or their siblings also cannot own the HDB and they have to sell it in the open market.
That's right. So one individual is only allowed to own one HDB.
One HDB. Now, the current government regulations.
Regardless how much you own.
Yes, of course.
So how about those people where their children are young and they do not own any HDB? What kind of repercussions would that create for them in future?
So basically what happens is that, say for example, a child is 5 years old now and their parents passed away, so they inherit the property as maybe as an orphan, 5 years old orphan. Later on, when they grow up, when they want to maybe get their own place with their spouse, they cannot buy a BTO any longer because they already have a HDB. Then they either have to sell the HDB that their parents left behind for them, or forgo a BTO and get a private instead, which may be even more difficult for them.
And just now when we were chatting, you shared that recently there's a very unique case that you were handling.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay, so basically, this guy, he just passed away. He's around 80 plus, so he has 13 siblings. 13 siblings, and he passed away without a will. So what happens is essentially his one HDB flat is to be divided among his 13 siblings. But the problem gets even worse because some of his siblings had already predeceased him. Then their children will get their share of the property, which resulted in even more beneficiaries for one HDB. Yeah. And what made it even more worse is that the 2 or 3 of the beneficiaries are not cooperative at all. For example, because if they do want their share, they have to renounce it. Right? So they have to agree to renounce their share of the HDB, which they refuse to sign any papers.
And what happens when one refuses to sign a refusal of the right? Then what happens?
Then there's a stalemate. We really can't do anything. So the only way to get out of this is for the executor to just sell the property and then to split the cash. Because now what they actually wanted to do is for the property to be transferred to one person's name, instead of the 13 siblings and other beneficiaries.
And everyone has to agree.
Have to agree, yeah.
And if you have just one party who does not agree,
sell. No alternative. I think the other extreme that I've seen as well is also sometimes parents come in and say that we want to give our son more and our daughter lesser.
son more.
Yeah, but also like, it's still a percentage. It's like 80%, 20%. But it means that she owns 20% of the property.
Right.
So if I were the daughter, I'll just say, never mind, just take my name out. Don't give me that percentage.
I have this misconception that today we need to really debunk it, right? Is
Okay.
that when they give a 1% share to one of the beneficiaries, they would think that another beneficiary who owns 99% would have the majority say. Is that true?
No.
Right.
The one who actually has the say on how to manage the assets, to call in the assets or to sell it, would be the executor.
Right.
I mean, that is in law, but in practical, what happens is that the executor always speak to the beneficiaries and ask for their opinions.
What is the time difference when you talk about like someone who has done his estate planning in a prim and proper way, you know, not to split the properties and make sure everything is well, compared to, for example, like a case where on average, no will, and maybe intestate, they split the properties across 5-6 siblings or children?
It really depends on how amenable they are, the beneficiaries are. I mean, to be very fair, I've also seen cases where we call all of them to come down, and they all come down one day and all 20 of them just sign the document.
Wow.
But very, very difficult.
Is that very rare? Like such
I've seen it once.
Out of?
All the cases I've done,
Over the last 5 years?
Yeah. I think we should think of estate planning as not for yourself, but for your loved ones, right? So, I mean, after you pass away, you don't really care what goes on, right? But you don't want your loved ones to start fighting over one property. It does not make sense at all. Okay, usually, because when we represent clients, we are very clear who we represent. So because of that, when the other siblings come and tell us about it, we tell them that we cannot represent you, we cannot advise you. So we do have some siblings who will call our office every day and tell us their sob stories. Then we just say, sorry, we cannot advise you, please find your own lawyer.
Wow.
And it gets very contested and very, very ugly. Yeah. So sometimes also they come in with 2 wills, and then one will gives one person everything, the other will gives the other sibling everything.
Oh, then what happens?
Dispute, yeah. It becomes a dispute in court.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you do a new will, tear your old will up. Always tear.
That's a very good advice. So that's why we always tell clients, right? You know, don't make your blessings be a curse, where beneficiaries, instead of opening their hands and receive the inheritance, but now they will want to like kind of cast it aside.
When we talk about estate planning and stamp duty, so generally there is no estate duties, which means that if you give a property to one child, you don't need to pay estate tax when you pass away.
Right.
However, what happens is that if you give the one property to 2 children, maybe A and B, right? Then after you pass away, A says, actually I don't want my share because I want to buy my own flat. So B will say, okay, then I'll buy your share from you, buy a share from A. When that happens, then B will have to pay buyer's stamp duty on A's share in order to
because
obtain
there's a transaction between the 2 children.
Yeah, it's like a sales and purchase
transaction.
Yeah.
And who bears the stamp duty?
The buyer.
So
B,
the poor child has to fork out
money to get the share from the sibling.
To rectify an issue that the parent did not do it properly, so to speak.
And the sibling did not even want the share.
Right. Oh, okay. Have you personally met that before?
Of course, yeah. But to be very fair to the parent also, they have good intentions because they want everything to be equal. They don't want to be seen as they are biased to anybody.
Oh yes, Berlin, one final question that most people like to ask, right, is that if they own a HDB, can they inherit a private property?
If you own a HDB, yes, you can inherit a private property on the condition that the HDB has already reached its MOP. That means 5 years after you stay in your HDB, you can own a private property.
How about the other way around?
So the first thing is, of course, you cannot own your own HDB currently. And secondly is you have to satisfy this condition. If the HDB was purchased before August 2010 and it was purchased unsubsidized, you can inherit it.
Yeah, Berlin, thank you so much for coming down today for this exclusive interview. So what is that one-liner advice that you would give the audience?
I would say when you have a property, don't give it to too many beneficiaries, ideally just one beneficiary.
So there you have it today, an exclusive interview with Berlin, Associate Director of 𝙒𝙗𝙧 LLC. Now if you like this video, click on below to subscribe and share this video. I'll see you in the next episode.